Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Honor the Feminine podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Ledford, and today we have the phenomenal Christine Gavin with us, and it is going to be fun. So, as you know, we start each episode with an image and story from my travels, because when I was out traveling is when I really started to hear my intuition again. She'd gotten lost in the day-to-day chaos and noise and expectations, and as I got out in the world, she started to whisper to me again. And I know she was always there, but she'd just gotten muffled. So today, our image is called Dancer in Red, and it was taken in Havana, Cuba. Havana is alive with music and movement every day, but during Habana Vieja Ciudad en Movimiento, that expression reaches new heights. The old Havana City of Movement Festival brings together dance troupes from all over the world to share their talent. The colorful band on stilts plays while spectators wind through the streets of Old Havana, following the music from dance performance to dance performance. The whole arrangement is brilliant because not only do the dancers create movement, but spectators become an intricate part of the movement as well. This dancer in red takes a moment of pause in her movement to soak up the energy around her. And this is the image that reminds me of our guest today, Christine Gavin. Christine, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. So share yourself with us. Tell us about you.
Well, first, I just want to speak to that photo because I love that idea of the energy that you get when you're performing. You know, I think probably any kind of performer can relate to this, but with dancing, ultimately why I do it, and I think why a lot of people do it, is that energy exchange that you get with the audience. You know, it's like nothing else. I can't even really explain kind of the depth of what it is about. But, you know, you practice, you create, and you practice, and you practice, and you practice, and you spend all of these hours, you know, over months often for what can be a 5-minute performance. But it's all worth it because of that, you know, that thing that you can't buy that. You can't just will it. It comes through. And that's why sometimes I don't even like sharing videos of performances that much, because I think you really lose that energy exchange that happens, you know, that when you're there, I think it's a gift for both the performer and the people in the audience. And that's why art is so powerful. And that's why I think it's so important for us to continue to understand its sacredness, protect it, you know, as so much in our world is trying to tear it down right now. And I, you know, part of my process, and I think why I'm here, is to help women be able to feel that, to have other women feel that same energetic exchange, because it's amazing. And I think it's something that we all deserve.
Can you take us back to the first time you felt it?
Oh man, I think probably when I was 5 years old. My mom started me on taking tap, ballet, and jazz when I was about 4, I believe. And she did this because when she would take me to go shopping and she was trying on, you know, clothes in the dressing room, I would be just kind of outside of the dressing room where the mirrors are. And she would come out of the dressing room and find me just dancing in front of the mirror. And people had kind of, you know, gathered around and were watching. And so to me, that was like, okay, dance was a part of me from day one. But I remember when I was 5, I think it was a tap class, and we were dancing to Jailhouse Rock by Elvis Presley. And I just remember that amazing feeling of dancing and just like shaking it out. And I think, you know, it was so different than ballet, both tap and jazz. You kind of got to cut loose a little bit more. And so I felt it in the class. And I remember, you know, my teacher there was an exchange with my teacher that I could tell that she knew that I felt the love, you know, and then I got to perform it. And I don't remember much about the performance other than kicking my legs so high in the air that I knocked myself in the head and fell down right on stage, right in the middle of the performance. I got back up and kept going. And that's really instilled in my brain because it was like, okay, I just made a fool out of myself. But my love for that dance, was so strong and so just like, I got to keep going on, And so I think that's where the performer was born. And I like to share that story with dancers that come to my class for the first time, because most of them, especially if they have danced as a child, a lot of them were told that their body didn't fit what a traditional dancer looked like, or they weren't, good enough on some realm. And so they were kind of, banished from dance or felt like they weren't a dancer. And my belief is everybody can dance. Everybody has movement in them. And then it's an amazing healing technique. And so I like to share that story because it's like you can make a fool out of yourself and still keep going, and it's ultimately.
This is the story of my life, my love.
And there's so much beauty in that too, It's such an incredible thing to keep pushing through, and also a connector, and also I think I learned that audiences can still be supportive even when you mess up like that, especially if you just get up and keep doing your thing, And I feel like we've been lucky in a lot of the shows that we've put on in Asheville, where most of the shows that we've done are student-based performances. So I've taught them a routine for, somewhere between 2 to 4 months. And we do a bunch of different classes, and then we put on a big show. And I don't tend to call these student showcases or anything, because I don't want people coming in with the idea of, oh, these are just students, because they excel. They excel when the challenge is put to them. But I also think that we've been so lucky in the supportive crowds that we've had. Every crowd that's ever been to any of our shows is just going wild, And so it's such an amazing thing to witness that and to have the women that take my classes experience that. So I think that's where it's come full circle in terms of the dance portion of my career, of being able to give that gift over. So even if they mess up, they come back out and do their thing, and everybody's super excited. So it's fun.
So your work is around enlivening women through dance. And can you speak to some of the transformations that you've seen? And you've touched on the body image part too. And I'd love to go there a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think it starts with the body image for me. I'll go into this a little bit later about getting sick at 23. But, essentially I've had issues with my body since probably about age 12 or 13, I would say. And I would say that's relatively common for most women that I know, sometimes a little bit later.
With that.
Yeah.
I started throwing my lunches away at school around 12.
Right, exactly. And I think that's the time for probably our generation and, a little bit older where things began. Now it's scary because some of these kids, it's starting at 7, because of a multitude of reasons, culturally, the media that's put out where these girls think they have to be super skinny and they have to wear, certain clothing, et cetera, and be over sexualized. And so we're, working hard against the grain of what's happening. But I think, part of my purpose here is to take those women who, like me, have struggled with body image for a long time, on different levels. For some women, that meant dieting young. For some women, that meant, full-blown eating disorders. For some women, it meant just simply hating their bodies or one particular part of their body. I find that that's often the case, and for me, that's always been my stomach. And for my mom, it was her stomach. So there you see it's passed down.
Oh, the conditioning.
Right. It's unfortunately passed down, generationally from our parents and what we see around us. And, obviously, probably genetically, she and I share a similar stomach too, like the actual shape of it and everything. So, and this can lead me into, I guess, talking about when I got sick. I got sick at 23, kind of not completely out of the blue. I'd graduated from college and I had moved. to California, and my stomach fell out. That's probably the easiest way to say it. And, over the long term, it took me a long time to get to this place, but I understood that hating my stomach for so long was a deep part of that. It's like if you dislike or send negative energy to a part of your body, it's going to give you problems at some point in your life, And now I also understand that I think of the stomach, personally, I think of the stomach as housing our soul. And so to me, it's where, especially women, that's where our true energy comes from, our creativity, our ability to give birth, whether that's to a human being or any kind of project in the world, And so if you send that negative energy for a long time, it's gonna come back to teach you a lesson, essentially. And so
and yours was generational too, right?
Absolutely.
Because I bet if we had your mom sitting next to you, maybe your grandmother also wasn't so fond of her stomach. I mean, so you what's that? Those energetics are strong. And the conditioning's strong by the time it gets to you.
Absolutely. And, I think that's really important because I definitely feel like I'm doing the healing work, not just for myself, but the generations before me. Like I feel that deeply, on multiple levels. But
that gives me chills. The break the cycle idea.
Absolutely. And if you're a person that believes in more than one life and that things aren't on a straight, linear line, you can do that healing where you're not only breaking it for future generations, but healing what's come before you, So I definitely think that's a major part of my work. And so, essentially the body image, I think, is a way to step in with women often because it like I said, probably 98% of women that I've ever talked to and that have come through my classes have issues with their body. And I don't know how anybody can get around it in our culture, any woman can get around it, and increasingly men too, because it's starting to be put on them, I think, on a different level than it ever had before. So, I think working from there, sorry, we're going to ask a question?
Oh, it just seems like such a beautiful access point to healing.
Yeah, because it is, that's the thing is that I think, well, so as an aside, I do this program called Metamorphosis, and I can talk more about that later. But we start by focusing on the mind because I think that so many people, that's their automatic place that they can go to. But then we quickly go into the body. And what I find is interesting is that so many of us are worried about our bodies, but yet we're disconnected from our bodies,
Culturally. And the crazy thing is that to me, and I'm no exception to this is a place where I play all the time to reinvigorate that dance in my life, right? Because our bodies, to me, hold so much information if we're listening.
Yes. Preach. I mean, it's so true. And that's one of the things that I'm grateful for now after 15 years of working with this personally is that sometimes people say to me, well, for a long time it was like, God, Christine, you're so sensitive, you're sensitive in your body. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm also so tuned in now that I know pretty quickly when something's wrong, whether that's on an emotional level, a physical level, a spiritual level. And yes, that means sometimes I can't do every single thing I want to, but I understand why now. And I understand that I have to respect those limits in order for, my body to do all the things I want it to. It's just like our body's telling us all the time what's happening, what its needs are, when you need to pull back, when you need to push forward. And so, obviously taking the time to get quiet and listen to that. But also, I feel like it's a practice like anything, go to the gym. Yep. You don't have any muscles to start with, and you start slowly by lifting a 5-pound weight, and then you go up to a 10-pound weight. And then over time, you may get up to 20 or whatever. But you build that muscle over time, and then it just becomes a little bit more automatic to you. And I think tuning into your body is the same thing. It's not something I have to consciously do anymore. it just knock, 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 lets me know when something's going on. And so I appreciate some of the feedback I've gotten from people, I'd say over the past couple of years. I don't get the so much like, oh, you're so sensitive anymore, as, wow, you're really tuned into your body. And I'm like, yeah, I am. And it's I'm so grateful for that, because I feel like I live my life such a different way. And I feel like you never know what can happen in life, and anybody can get sick anytime, no matter how much work that they do. But I feel like I'm very conscious and aware to not go down the same path that I've seen a lot of my, people generationally before me, and even people that I know now that I worry about, as time goes on. So.
And I think that's such a beautiful shift in the sentiment that you were talking about, from, oh, you're so sensitive, to, wow, you're really in tune with your body, because that's a shift in values.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure part of that is how it lives in your cells now in a really deep way. But I also think collectively there's a shift in valuing that, being more embodied, tapping into the information of our bodies. I mean, I think we're ripe for it. I think it's one of the ways we honor the feminine, actually.
Oh, totally. I definitely think that without the shift into, a more feminine mindset, or, depending on your beliefs, some people believe that we've moved back into the feminine unilaterally, internationally in all ways. But I think the things that I'm grateful for so much of the time, even as we face so many of the negative things happening in the world, is that I think authenticity has been held up in a way that it never has in the past. I really feel like people had to hide their true selves and hide how they really felt about things, and, acted as if everything was perfect and had this cover. And that's not working anymore. That acting like you're perfect, having that cover. Authenticity is what people are craving and connecting, and the intuition and the connection embodiment is the other value that has really risen. And, I think understanding that our lives are only going to get better and are only enriched by really feeling our bodies, I mean, in such a deep way. I mean, we've been cut off from that, for so long. And I think we've missed out on that, on a deep level of love, love for ourselves and others, by that disconnect. And so much of what we see in the world right now is because of that disconnection and that lack of access to love, I think. So, I think, I have my master's in holistic health education. And one of the first things I learned going into that program is that your mind, body, spirit are all intimately connected, and you can't impact one without impacting the rest. And so it doesn't really matter which way you go in. It's going to impact them all. But it's an amazing thing to tap into the body spectrum, I think, for so many people. And it's little things that people can do that open them wide up. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And I think that's partially why we do the podcast, is that different access points resonate with different people at different times.
Yes.
So yeah, it all has the potential ability to open a person up, right? Who's listening.
Absolutely.
And that's really fun. And we've been, so as we're talking about all this, how are you honoring the feminine and staying in touch with your intuition on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I learned probably about 2 to 3 years ago, I need to take a break every afternoon, whether that is 10 minutes or whether that's 30 minutes. And I have a couple of different visualizations that I rotate, that I listen to. And, sometimes I fall asleep, quote unquote, fall asleep doing that. Sometimes I'm wide awake.
I call that napitation.
Exactly. There you go. I like that. I'm going to borrow that one. It's so true. But, whatever way you look at it, it revives me, and whether that's an energetic, I think of it as an energetic revitalization, because I don't have to really even go even close to asleep or really go out of my mind that much, but just taking that time to sit and get my attention on something else other than probably the work that I've been doing for many hours up until that point. And that is what I feel like saves me. I'm like, how did I ever survive entire days without doing that, and every once in a while I'll have such a crazy day where I don't have the chance to do that. And I really feel that, and so I think for me, the reconnecting internally every day, even if it's not, I'd love to be able to spend an hour and a half doing that. And that's not really feasible most of the time, but even just 10 minutes. And that's what I try and tell people, like, even if just 5 minutes, to just slow down, to sit, to really, disconnect your brain for just that amount of time will shift so much in your life. You can't even believe it.
And I love the idea about cultivating a practice like that becomes ritual.
Yes.
And I love that feeling that you're talking about like, yeah, in a day when it doesn't happen, I can feel that.
Oof. Yes, I can. yeah. It's not pretty.
But isn't that beautiful knowledge about ourselves?
Absolutely. And I want that for everyone. I think that there's so much information out there nowadays that people know a lot of this stuff, but it does need to become a ritual, and sometimes, I know people don't like this word, and trust me, I don't like this word either, but discipline is a part of any kind of healing journey, and really any kind of journey in and of itself where you want to really get to know something, or someone. And so I think what becomes ritual, and I definitely like the idea of thinking of it more as ritual than discipline, but also taking that negative connotation around discipline out a little bit.
Yep.
Because it really does take, some days you don't feel like meditating. Some days you don't feel like going to a dance class or going to the gym. Some days you don't feel like eating healthy. And I'm a firm believer that on occasion you got to let that just be and not do those things. But for the most part, you need to keep that practice going, because that's where you see real results. Without doing that, you miss out on so much. So that's why I think it's so good for people to really start with those little bits each day. And then maybe they do take a day off and they realize, ooh, I miss that. I really do miss that.
Yeah. And I resist the discipline and the routine.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I'd love to tell you that I don't. And I very much consciously understand the value of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But the doing of it, I fall short. Not always, but more than I'd like. And so the idea of ritual to me somehow softens it.
Yeah.
Like, my husband talks about routine, and that like bristles me. And he has he has a beautiful routine.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he gets up and moves every morning. He does the 5 Tibetans and has for, I don't know, 12, 15 years. I mean, it's beautiful for his body. It's the way he taps in. But he uses the word routine with me, and I mean, my whole body just is like, hell no.
Ooh,
no.
Yeah.
But as I have deepened into ritual, that somehow feels better to me. So I just offer that and invite people to like step in wherever that might feel good to them, because I am in deep agreement with you around the consistency and the discipline can create in simple things, in simple changes, can create just huge, profound impacts for our lives.
Absolutely. And I think that's really important. What you bring up too is, words have power and deep meaning. And so just like anything else, if a word turns you off, find another word that has a similar meaning but feels better to you, because it can shift so much if you get away from that word that makes you cringe. Of course, you're not going to want to do anything that makes you cringe, right? You're like, I want to run as far away as possible from that. So,
well, and there's something about like, for me to feel into why routine triggers me, right?
Right.
Like
right.
why, how it feels like it boxes me in some way, where ritual feels so beautiful, even though on the surface it looks exactly the same.
Totally. But I think that goes to showing, both how our brains are wired differently. And so figuring out what works for you and also energetically, and it's interesting because that can shift over time too, because I'm a Capricorn, right? And so for so much of my life, people would say, oh, you must be super disciplined because Capricorns are the goat plodding one foot in front of the other to get to the top of the mountain. And I was like, no, I'm not disciplined. I hate that word, and it kept coming at me and kept coming at me. And I was just finally, just really recently, have I been able to sort of shift that connotation, I think, in my mind a little bit to see the sacredness in it, I think, in the spirituality in it. Without it, because I'm the same way, I'll start to feel boxed in and I go into fight or flight. I'm like, oh, I don't want to, even if it's good for me. Like, it's real, it's deep. I know it, and I know everybody experiences that. And that's why I believe you do have to give little breaks here and there, and not beat yourself up about it. And for each person, that's different how much time that is, I do feel, going back to the body thing, that because of becoming so much in touch with my body, I can't veer off course as much as I used to. And I think that's the beauty in healing work, is that doing the work to connect will kind of, I don't know if rein you in is the best way to put it, but it won't allow you to go so crazy left and right like I used to. I feel like I would, just ricochet from one end of the spectrum to the other. And I can talk about that in terms of food for me, because I tried to do a lot of healing work around food. And I needed to go through this process, but I've done every, dietary, especially I'd say, quote unquote, healthy dietary approach on the planet, veganism, which I was vegan for 5 years, vegetarian 2 years on either side of veganism, raw foods, paleo, et cetera, et cetera. And, it so much comes back to that was like an external thing that I was trying to do, right? Instead of coming into the internal. And a lot of those diets were really bad for my body, and they actually made things worse, and I got to a point where I feel like I was on the spectrum of orthorexia, which I'm not sure if you've heard of that, but it's actually in the DSM-4 now, that, people that become obsessed with healthy eating. Mm-hmm. And it can be too extreme too. It's still an external thing that you're trying to do to heal an internal process, I feel like. And so, now going through all of that, and, I may have to deal with healing my body for the rest of my life. I understand that, but like, I feel so much better now that I really tune into what foods feel good to me, and that has nothing to do with what is told to me in the world, and understanding like, okay, well, this may be a healthy food, but that may not be good for me. And this may be a quote unquote unhealthy food, but right now that's what my body needs. And so really going through that process of becoming more embodied, I don't have to think about it so much anymore. It's like my body just tells me, which is, I'm grateful to be here.
Yeah. And I'm really at that point where I'm feeling into that a lot. Like, does it feel good? How does it feel? And getting that, cultivating the relationship between, I feel like I've spent so long using my mind to control my body. Yes. And I'm very over that. At this point, and am cultivating that space where my mind and my body can have a very loving relationship with each other and really commune together. And am I perfect at that? Oh gosh, no. But is it an intention, and is it a place where I'm playing all the time right now? Yes.
Yes. And that's what it is. I believe healing is a spiral and not just this linear path. And you're going to come back around to things and face them, again, but in a little different way, because it's a little bit further up, and, but just speaking to what you were just talking about, it made me think about, some of the sort of cutting edge research that's happening right now is about bacteria, in our guts, right? And I mean, I think a lot of us in the alternative health world, already know how important getting good bacteria and getting probiotics. And we've known that for a little bit longer than sort of mainstream, medicine has known. But they're finding out more and more that I think I just read recently, like 80% of our, it's not endorphins, it's the other one, is located in our bowels, and that is actually what impacts our whole mental attitude. And so it's like they're figuring out, we've known for a while, obviously, that the mind and body are connected through the central nervous system, but they're finding out that the stomach is telling the brain a lot of things, not just the brain telling the stomach. And so I think, I'm obsessed recently with reading all the stuff on bacteria. What they're finding is like the bacteria has been thrown off in our bodies with the excessive use of antibiotics and not getting really probiotics daily in our foods for most of us, and then a lot of obviously chemicals in our environment and stuff. But that's the underlying cause of so much of the inflammation that happens in our body, which is the underlying cause of so much disease.
Disease. Let's just.
All disease.
I mean,
okay.
The inflammation is basically causing the whole spectrum of everything. How that inflammation is being caused seems to have a lot of different variables that mix together. But to me, inflammation is that's the gig.
I was like, speak it.
That's the culprit.
I was trying to go around the surface a little bit.
No,
in case
I'm talking about like mental, physical, doesn't matter. Inflammation's the culprit. Absolutely.
And I think it's so interesting because obviously it's not just diet that impacts inflammation. It's stress and all these other things too. But to understand what's happening in our guts, and I think, going back to what I said earlier, that energy, it doesn't surprise me that so many women have issues in their guts, not only because of the food that we consume, but because of the negative energy that we, place there. And so it's like, if we get into real healing, it's thinking about that area of our body so much more, I think, than our minds, and the mind will follow, it's like, we can give the mind a break sometimes. It's in control, like all the time, like let's give it a little break, let the body. And then, like I said, I believe the soul is housed in the stomach. So let the body and the soul do some work for a while and sort of lead this gig, and then move from there.
Can you talk to us a little bit about Metamorphosis and how that works?
Yeah, sure. So, I've been teaching dance now for about 5 years. After dancing for all of my life, I finally, had the push towards teaching for a long time, but was always too scared to do it, and finally took the plunge. And that's been a huge part of my life for the last 5 years. But, most of my 20s I spent healing myself, and I spent in my master's program and a nutrition program, and then seeing clients for nutrition. And that didn't fulfill me in the way that it just didn't quite work. There was a disconnect for me there. And so I, got into freelance writing for health and that kind of thing, and then came to dancing. And now I feel like things are really starting to come full circle, because obviously all of that healing has never been away from me. It's part of my everyday life, and it's part of the lives of people that are close to me, because inevitably they're going to hear about it, And so Metamorphosis is something that started brewing in my mind a couple of years ago. And I actually started a dance class called Jazzy Stretch and Strengthen that combined bringing in, stretch, like yoga type stretches, and essential oils and other healing techniques that I felt like I was kind of sneaking in, along with the dance. It's like, come dance, and I'll just show you a couple of other little things.
Here's a really easy access point. Let me show you maybe some other things that might resonate.
Just while you're here, you can take it or leave it. And, people really enjoyed that. And I saw the deepening happening that I wanted to see, in my work. I love dance. I love movement. I think it's a great access point, as we've talked about, but I want to dip deeper, because I know of my own healing path. I had to dig deep. And so that was the beginning. And I was like, okay, I want to take this bigger. I want to expand on this. So I created the Metamorphosis Program, which is a 12-week program where each week we look at a different healing modality. So we always start off with the Metamorphosis Ritual Groove, which is about a 20-minute movement-based technique where we do stretching and we do some chakra dancing and we do some deep breathing. We listen to a visualization, a pre-recorded one in the beginning, but then I have each participant record their own visualization, because I think it's really cool and important to have your own voice coming back at you as you're trying to, shift and change things. And it's so easy to do. And so we record that within the first couple weeks. And so they start listening to that. And then we do a little bit of core work, because I think that's important too, in connecting to that middle part of your body. And then the rest of the class, we focus on what that healing modality is for that week. And so we start the first couple of weeks, first 3 weeks or so are mind-based modalities. And then we get into body-based modalities. And then we get into energetic or spiritual, modalities. And I like to make clear, it's not about religion at all, and I always tell people, like, whatever kind of thing that you want to call it, even if you don't like the word universe, because I know that puts some people off, but some kind of just deeper connection within yourself into something bigger than yourself, whatever that means, because I think that's where a lot of the energy modalities really connect into. And so my whole thing with Metamorphosis is I've picked the things that have worked the best for me after trying a gazillion things, and I don't even expect that all of the things that I teach people are going to work for them. But that's part of why we do the 12 weeks, because by the end, I find that there are anywhere from 3 to 5 things that each individual person has found really works for them. Yeah. And so at the end, they tell me what those are, and I create like a literal toolbox that I give to them the last session that has reminders in there, tools in there that they can come back to when they inevitably hit the wall, because we all do again. And sometimes we need a physical thing to just be like, okay, this is what this is something I can do right now. Because I find that's been helpful for me at times where I'm caught and I feel like I can't go anywhere. When I didn't have a toolbox, I would forget all of my learning. It just like kind of, you blank out. Yes. And so to have a toolbox, like, okay, I literally can walk over to my bookshelf and pull this thing off and have access to that. And so I think that's an important part of it. And the goal really is for any woman, wherever she is in her life, whatever stage she wants to get to next, these can help. So whether that's healing, whether that's career, whether that's relationship, because ultimately you have to work on you in order to get to that next level in whatever you want to do in your life.
And that's so gorgeous, because you're really practicing that muscle of discernment. Like what resonates. And so here's 12 things, and you start to discern, like, this feels good and maybe this doesn't. And you start to know what that feels like in your body.
Yes, absolutely.
Regardless of what the modality is that you're feeling into.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. I love that view of it. It's perfect.
So on that note, my love, are you ready for the random questions?
I think so. I'm like, oh.
So the first one is, if you could sit down with any woman, alive or dead, for a chat and tea, who would it be?
I think probably Elizabeth Gilbert. I know probably a lot of people say that, but I so admire her for speaking her truth all the time, without condensation. Was that the word? I don't know.
Without feeling condescending. Yes.
Condescending. Yes. That's it. Without feeling condescending, without acting as if she ultimately knows more than other people. She just speaks her truth. And she also, she kind of, even though she's not from the South, she reminds me of an old Southern woman who will just say whatever it is on her brain and not worry about what other people think about it, but she's so profound, I think, in the things that she has to tell people. And I've seen her, ultimately open up so many people that I know to believe that they can do more than they thought they could. So
that's beautiful. Yeah. And for anyone who hasn't tapped in with her Big Magic, her book, Big Magic, and then she does this. She's actually, one of my favorite podcasts is called Magic Lessons.
Right.
she's done a couple of seasons of magic lessons where she brings on an artist of some vein and helps them, and then brings on some of her friends that are, you know, big time artists like Cheryl Strayed and Glenn Doyle Melton and all those people, and Rob Bell. And it's really a fun place to play with her in the Magic Lessons podcast. So I put that out there as if people are interested in tapping into that. And if Liz, if you're listening, come to Asheville again. Come have tea with us.
Seriously.
It'll be super fun. I promise.
I am there. Doesn't matter when or where.
And the second question is, where would you most like to travel?
I have had Iceland on the mind, on the brain for, I don't know, probably the last year or so. You know, it's funny because I actually did a lot of traveling in my 20s. I got to go to Zambia and Zimbabwe and Tanzania and Africa. And I've been to most of Western Europe, and I've been to Australia. And then, you know, really working on my own business for the last few years has kept me from the kind of travel that I would love to be doing. But Iceland has been on my list because I literally, when I was doing some travel writing, it came up a lot too. I just want to sit in those hot springs surrounded by snow. Like, just, that's all I want to do there. Just the whole entire time. I'm set. 5 days of that. Perfect. So, yeah.
Awesome. I haven't been to Iceland. I've actually had the opportunity a couple of times and haven't jumped at it, which, yes.
It's crazy. No,
it's crazy in some ways. But it's come up a couple of times recently, so that's interesting. Yeah. So, my love, how do we reach out and connect with you? How do we deepen in with Christine?
Well, one of the easiest ways is to go to my website, which is ChristineGarvin.com, and that's ChristineGarvin.com. And that really gives an overview of all the dance classes and all and the Metamorphosis Program and some of the other things that I do. You can also go to my Facebook page, Christine Garvin Dance. It might be in Transform now. That's where I changed it at some point. Let me look it up really quick.
No, it's fine because we'll put the link so that people have a really easy way.
I know. I was like, that's horrible. And you can also find me on Instagram, which I've been loving lately. And that's just Christine Garvin. And yes, sorry, the Facebook is Christine Garvin Dance+Transform. So those are the big, you know, and then also, you know, my number is on my website and email address. So feel free to contact me any of those ways.
And we will put all of that in the show notes for this episode at honorthefeminine.com. My love, this was so juicy today. Thank you.
Thank you. I had such a good time.
Hello again, everyone. It was so lovely to be with Christine today. And there's so much beauty in the interaction and energy exchange that she spoke into around between her and the audience when she dances. And the space that she creates for her metamorphosis and then for other women. It just feels like magnificent. So if you want to deepen in with Christine, you can go over to the show notes for this episode at honorthefeminine.com. The really exciting news is around remembering divine union. So my dear soul sister, Ava Aldenalfi, and I will be stepping in with amazing women on a journey, on an 8-month journey on the intertwining between the sacred masculine and the divine feminine. And it's going to be a journey of activation and discernment. And it's really potent. And I'm really excited about it. So if you want to deepen in with us and feel into that, you can go over to rememberingdivineunion.com. To step into our Honor the Feminine community, you can join us in Sacred Space on Facebook at Honor the Feminine Daily. I go live there very often to share what's going on sort of day to day and how I honor the feminine every day. And subscribe to the podcast if you liked this episode and share it with a friend. That's how I find all my new podcasts, is that friends share them, dear sisters share them with me. And subscribing just means that you're not going to miss any of the amazing things that we have coming up. All right, everyone, have a magical day.